Hello, welcome to this section. My name is Christian Ibuo, and in this section, I'm going to be taking you on production planning and quality control. At the end of this section, you will be able to properly plan, understand the quality standards and measures that you need to put in place, and also safety procedures for a successful modular building construction. So, production planning and quality control. I think the first thing we are going to be looking at is what production plan is in modular building and how we actually plan. First of all, what's the plan? A plan is a document. It outlines how we want to produce or manufacture a modular building over a period of time. There are key elements or key things that a plan should contain. The first is the product details. The details of the product talks about what exactly it is that the product should have, what exactly it is that the product is going to be doing, what exactly it is that the product is going to be used for. The second element is the schedule. How long is it going to take us to produce the building, the cabin, or any modular structure? It also contains the quality plan. The quality plan talks about the criteria that makes for acceptance of the particular product. So a plan contains the quality requirements of the customer. Another element that the plan must contain is the resource requirements. The resource talks about the material that we need, not just physical material. We talk about human resource material that will be needed for successful construction of the modular building. Another element is the cost estimates. The plan tells us how much is the modular building, the structure, the cabin is going to cost. It tells us in details the cost of the materials, the cost of human resource, the cost of machinery, all that cumulated together gives us the overall cost of running the construction of the project. Lastly, the plan will contain the number of structures that is needed by the clients. It tells us if it is two cabin, if it is three cabin, if it is four cabin. It gives us in details what exactly is required for the construction of this cabin, the elements that is needed inside the cabin, if it is furniture, if it's electrical, if it is plumbing, if it's mechanical. The plan highlights every one of these requirements from the customer. So that's what a plan is. Next, we'll be looking at planning and scheduling process. The planning and the scheduling process for modular building construction. What is the process that is required for proper planning and proper scheduling? I'm going to be talking about 7 steps for proper planning and proper scheduling. I'll highlight the steps and then I'll take them one after the other. So 7 steps. The first one is we must define the project scope. Secondly, we must design and then we must get approval for the design. Third is we must plan for the resource and we must also do an analysis for the amount of resources that is required to start and finish the project. The fourth one is the scheduling. We must, of course, have a schedule for our project. The fifth is the quality management plan. Every project must have a quality management plan. The quality management plan tells us what we must do to ensure that the customers are happy at the end of the day. The sixth is a safety plan. The seventh is the execution, of course, monitoring, controlling, and the reporting. So I would start from the first one, which is the project scope. What exactly is the project scope? The project scope tells us the material specification, it tells us the product requirements and the location also where this particular cabin or the structure is going to be used. It is important for us to understand the scope. Understanding of the scope gives us a better approach to executing the project. A scope that is not well defined would eventually lead to issues at the end of the day during the process of construction. So it is important at the beginning of a project to get the exact scope of that project. So the next step in the planning and scheduling process is to design. to create a conceptual design. I know a lot of people feel this particular step is not necessary, but it is quite important for you to create a design. The design gives you a roadmap on how you plan on doing your construction. Many people really don't do the design or represent the design or present the design to the clients, but they somehow do the design in a sketchy form or do the design in their head. But the most important thing, or what's important with regards to this process, is that the design gives you a direction on how to go about your construction. If you don't have a proper design, it's likely you might encounter issues in the process of execution while doing your construction. So the design is quite important, and it's also important for you to get the design approved. It's one thing for you to do a design, be it 2D or 3D. Another thing is for you to get it approved and signed out by the client. So the second step, as I said, is the design and approval. The third step is resource planning and analysis. Now that the design has been approved, the next thing is to actually, from your design, um, figure out what are the resources that are actually required to ensure you properly complete the construction. The resource can be in form of manpower, it can be material resource, it can be equipment and the tools that is necessary for construction. So after your design, the next step is to plan your resource. The fourth step is scheduling. Now that we know the materials that is required for the construction, I think next step is to do a breakdown of how we actually plan on doing this construction or doing the fabrication. And once we've broken down these steps or gotten the breakdown of the tasks, the next thing will be to schedule. How long is it going to take us to fix the roof? How long is it going to take us to procure the materials? How long is it going to take us to get the materials to site and start erecting the steels, erecting the panels, fixing the roof, fixing the electrical, fixing the plumbing? Scheduling is the exact period is going to you are going to actually get those things done. If it's a Monday to Tuesday, Tuesday to Wednesday, and it also tells you the amount of days that you will require for each of those activities or tasks. So the next step in the planning and scheduling process is the quality management plan. A lot of us might think this is absolutely not necessary, but then the quality plan must be put in place. What exactly is the plan to ensure quality? What is the plan to ensure that the customer gets what they actually requested for? So this is where ITPs come into play: checklists, reporting systems, supervisions. The bottom line is ensure that the customer gets whatever it is that they actually require of you and of the modular building and structure. The sixth step in the planning and scheduling process is the safety plan. Safety is important. You must, how do they put it in the safety language? If it is not safe, don't do it. There's no need doing something or a project if it is not going to be safe. So you must have a safety plan. The safety plan helps us identify the PPEs that are required for the construction. It helps us do a risk assessment, and the risk assessment tells us what the contingencies, the response plan whenever a risk comes to light. So the safety plan is very important, and we must not skip this particular process. I think the last step is the execution monitoring and then reporting. You've started your construction, you've started erecting your steel structures. We must always monitor, we must report defects, we must report issues, and we must document the process of the construction. So that is the 7 steps that is required for planning and scheduling process. So we'll be going to the panel assembly practice. What is a panel assembly practice? Okay, it's these are things that we must keep in mind, or rather have in mind, for us before we can start assembling our panels, before we can start our constructions. The things that we need to check out on our checklist, ensure we have in mind so that we can have successful modular building construction. The first is the site readiness. What is your foundation like? Is your foundation level? Um, is it straight? Is it flooded? Is it clean? Is it dry? Um, Secondly, is you you have to eventually do your markouts. Mark out the lines and the parts that your panel are going to be going through. And this is important because if you don't do your mark out properly, you most likely not have a straight wall or a straight um, 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 panel setting. The second is material handling. You can have a good panel from a good manufacturer, but if you don't handle it well, you most likely have a defective product at the end of the day. So, what are the things that we must have in mind with regards to material handling? Um, what are the tools? What are the machines required to move your materials from one point to the other point? Do you drag your panels on the ground? What and safety PPEs are required for you to lift your panels? Um, do you move your panels with dirty materials, or do you place them on an uneven ground? So the some of the things we must have in mind is that while handling our panels is we must move our panels with a lifter. We must place our panels on a flat surface, and we must ensure not to drag our panels on the floor. For some panels that have a nylon film on them, a protective nylon film on them, we should always ensure we complete our installation before removing these films. I've seen a lot of people remove the films before they install. Some people remove the film and then they end up dragging the panel and creating a lot of scratches on this panel, which eventually will not be pleasant for the customer. So we should ensure that we handle our materials properly, so we have a good construction at the end of the day. Lastly, with regards to the panel assembly practice, is our tool checklist. What are the tools that we require for construction? We must have every one of them in place. First might be a pneumatic screwdriver. The reason why we need a pneumatic screwdriver is basically to ensure we work safely, number one, and then it makes the work easier. We don't have to exhaust a lot of energy and time in the assembly process. The second is must have a PU foam applicator for areas and crevices where we need to fill up. Must have a panel lift, as I said. That's what we need for moving and lifting our panels so that we don't end up damaging the panels before completing our construction. Must have a sprint level, a chalk line, a clamp. These things are needed to ensure we have a straight panel erection. We don't have issues with wobbling panels. We don't have issues with misalignment. We don't have issues with panels not setting properly. So this is what the sprint level is needed for. And lastly, on our checklist is our PPEs. We need our gloves, the helmet, the eye protection. For people that are going to be using the cutting machine, it's important we have all our PPEs in place. Lastly, in this section, we'll be talking about the panel installation. We've looked at what the plan is. We've looked at the planning and the scheduling process. We've looked at the tools, the checklist, the PPEs, and the things that are needed for a successful modular building construction. Now we'll be looking at panel installation. So I'm going to give you 4 steps for panel installation. The first is we're going to place our channels. Our channels is what channel or profiles, or some people use angle profiles, some people use U channels, depending on the preference and the function. The panel receives the sandwich panel, or holds the sandwich panels down to on a particular track. So the first thing we do is to install the channels. Second thing is to start installing the first panel. We install the first panel, and then we'll install the subsequent panel. Now, after installation of these panels, we must ensure that these panels key properly. Usually, panels usually have the tongue and the groove. This is the system that we use in keying panels together, more like the male and the female. So the fourth part is after installing all subsequent panels and we are done assembling our panels, The fourth part is to seal up all corners. Firstly, using our PU foams, our sealants, and then closing it up with our finishing, our profiles, or flashings, depending on the design that we are actually working with. So next is the roof installation. How do we install panel roofs? Panel roof is not like other roofs that you just install and then you use your nail to hit it inside. Most installation, most modular building constructions are usually steel structures. So how do we actually install our roof? We make use of a self-tap screw and then a machine to fasten it to the steel structure. So what are the steps that we actually require for our roof panel installation? We must start from the lowest point and then we'll now walk upwards. We install our overlap joints and then ensure that our slope orientation is actually correct and adequate enough to um, um, ensure the proper flow of water from the roof. So we use our fasteners and rubber gaskets to ensure that there is every space is properly sealed. There is no water ingress or there is no risk of leakage in the future. Lastly, is we will apply a butty or a sealant tape at the top of the roof. This is also to prevent leakage and to ensure um, that we don't have any leakage problem in the future. So lastly, as I close, in this process of production planning and quality control, there are 4 points I need us to take note of. The first is quality time spent in design will save you a lot in the process of installation. Secondly, the quality of materials will eventually translate to the quality of the final product. Thirdly, we must ensure we use the right tools and equipment to save our time and then produce quality output. And then lastly, quality of the workmanship and supervision has a very big part to play on the overall output of our product. So now we come to the end of this section. My name again is Christian Ibo, and I hope you've learned a lot in this section. If you have any question, please feel free to reach out to us.